Good morning, teacher and friends. We are Group 11 and this is our presentation answering the assignment that asked us to choose a video clip about 2 or 3 minutes about a manager motivating his or her employees. That one little we are going to talk about today is Steve Jobs. We are going to analyze his motivation techniques and then give some recommendation for him as well as other managers. Okay, so moving on to the first part, which is introduction. Let's have a glance on Steve Jobs and Apple. He was born in 1955 and sadly he passed away in 2011. He was an American business magnate, an industrial designer, an investor, and a media proprietor. He was the chairman, the CEO, and the co-founder of Apple Incorporated. He played a prominent role in the growth of Apple. He had a vision for a company that would do more than just creating computers for the masses. Later on, he was also largely responsible for helping revive Apple, which had been on the verge of bankruptcy in the 1990s. About Apple, it was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne in April 1976. Apple's retail footprint has since expanded to 510 stores, spanning 25 countries and regions. Even though Apple was the second most valuable brand in the world in 2017, it was not among the world's largest companies in terms of staff. As of 2019, the company's number of employees stood at 137,000. The second part of our presentation today, which is the literature review on motivation, will now be presented by Ling.
So, we are all familiar with the term motivation, but how can we define it? It is the process by which a person's efforts are energized, directed, and sustained toward attaining a goal. Motivation is the make it or break it factor in everything we do. For individuals, it is the drive that pushes us forward to achieve personal goals, job satisfaction, and self-development. For organization, motivation can affect multiple aspects from strategic structure to HR dimension. Regarding labor force, great foundation of motivation can bring many benefits: increase in employees' commitment, improve employees' satisfaction, improvement in quality and productivity, and long-term stability. And that is only the tip of the ice. Moving on to classification. Motivation can be divided into two types: intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is described as behavior driven by internal reward. It exists within individuals rather than relying on external pressure, and the effect can be long-lasting, self-sustaining, and satisfying. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, comes from external influence, but this kind of motivation shows little persistence once the rewards are removed. First, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow created a system reflecting the universal needs of society at its base, and then proceeding to more acquired emotion. This means that in order for motivation to arise to the next stage, each stage must be satisfied from the lowest to highest. The foundation is physiological needs, the needs for food, water, shelter, and so on. After this base is satisfied, safety needs will take precedence, and then love and belonging needs. With the fulfillment of intimacy and feelings, esteem needs arise and dominate behaviors, and the highest of them all, self-actualization, pose the desire to become the best one can be. Second, X and Y theory. McGregor's ideas suggest that there are two fundamental approaches to manage people. Theory X presents a pessimistic picture of employees' nature and behavior, whereas Theory Y represents an optimistic view. From that conclusion, there will be two ways to structure your organization and treat your employees. To explore how we use these two theories in breaking down Steve Jobs' motivational speech, we will turn to the next section.
My teammates have provided general information about our main characters Steve Jobs and Apple, and also the literature review on the conception of motivation. Now let's have a closer look at how Steve Jobs motivates his employees?
What we're about isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe.
Firstly, Steve Jobs refers to vision. Steve said, Apple at the core, its core value is what we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. Those sayings were just the same as self-actualization in theory of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In Steve's point of view, he and Apple believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. They fulfill their employees and set out for people who bought their products. This is exactly Steve's vision. Apple core value that motivate their subordinates and promote their customers.
Say of all the people I've met, there was nobody, clearly nobody like Steve. When you were next to him and he was talking to you, you could feel the electricity in your body. You could feel his charisma. And it wasn't just because he was a cult leader or anything. You just actually could feel it, because I'm not necessarily a cult follower. And he made you feel, he could inspire you. He made you feel like you could do anything. And as long as you believed that, you really could do anything, as long as you're willing to sacrifice everything else.
Secondly, the content in his employees' sayings is inspiration. Related to Steve's sayings, we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That is what inspired people around him. As you can see in the video of his employees, they pick up the message loud and clear about the application of self-esteem needs. He made them feel like they could not only change the world, but that anything was possible if they were had enough. Steve's influence on his subordinates is positive, make them willing to work, become more confident to face with problems, or even sacrifice everything. This enhances their self-esteem, overcome themselves to develop.
Sun is, if you will, our friend, because they're going to spend their marketing money to convince people to move into the segment. But the minute they've made their choice to move into the segment, whether we've convinced them or Sun has convinced them, Sun and Next are mortal enemies.
If we zoom out at the big picture, it would be a shame to have lost the war because we've won a few battles. And I sort of feel like I and some of the rest of us are concentrating too much on the smaller battles.
We have to keep
and we're not keeping the war in perspective, and the war is called survival.
Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right?
One interesting thing is that there is always an enemy in Steve Jobs' stories. In the early days, Steve Jobs made IBM the enemy of Apple. This brings us back to the theory of needs. After satisfying the safety needs and the self-esteem needs, self-actualization needs will be fulfilled. It refers to people's competitive needs and their ambition to win. They seek to fulfill their highest potential and create a positive impact on the world. Having an enemy gets people fired up. The moment the employees recognize the enemy's presence, they behave differently. The simple existence of an enemy provokes a change in the postures of workers, makes them more aware, and enters how they prepare for the upcomings, how they organize themselves. Thirdly, he refers using high-stake metaphors. Steve Jobs has always been considered as the Apple wizard that casts spells on his audience during each of his presentations. One of the most powerful tools that this man uses is metaphor. Metaphor is a figure of speech that uses symbols which have a similar meaning instead of reality to denote or describe something. Let's have a closer look at how Steve Jobs used high-stake metaphors to ignite the enthusiasm of his employees. According to hierarchy of needs, this method of Steve Jobs has pretty much of an impact on an employee's needs for safety. His metaphor of war and battles, give his employees the feeling of shudder, of unsecure, unsafety, and the feeling that their first priority of survival and safety is not yet met. Moving on to the next theory, Steve Jobs once said that quality is much better than quantity. One home run is much better than two doubles. He chose Theory X as his belief that every employee needed to be given a clear instruction and under supervision. Steve Jobs recognized the impact of discipline and chose to focus on this first as he begins to remaking Apple in 1997. Great companies are built through discipline. Great achievement require discipline. Jobs created an accountability system to make sure that everyone could do their best work on what they should be doing and nothing else.
And then he looked up at me and just stared at me with this stare that only Steve Jobs has. And he said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And I just gulped, because I knew I would wonder for the rest of my life, what I would have missed.
Last but not least, let's talk about Steve Jobs' strong and endless belief. Steve Jobs believed everything he said to a fault. He had this vision of the world that he truly felt was going to come true. And when he communicated with people, they sensed how much he believed in it, and that certainty made them jump onto his bandwagon. The truth is that Steve Jobs didn't talk about terms of possibilities, but he talked in terms of certainties. And that is the closing of our analysis. After analyzing Steve Jobs' motivation methods, now we are going to move on to Quỳnh Giao to talk about some recommendations for the future managers.
Employee motivation plays a very important and decisional role in the company's success. However, there are still a lot of managers who meet difficulties in creating motivation for their staffs. Therefore, our group will have some recommendations for other managers. The first recommendation is that a manager needs to have a clear and persuasive vision. As we know, a vision shows where the company is headed and help the leaders prepare for the future. And most importantly, when the leader shares the vision with his employees in a clear way, it will make all the staff connect to the picture of a better place, and they will quickly pull their motivations as high as they can to achieve the goals. Another recommendation that we can learn from Steve Jobs is leaders should inspire people about them, because their employees tend to look at their leader to set an example for the rest of the group. So if the leaders always stay optimistic about everything and let go of negative things, even in the difficult times, their staffs will have the motivations to overcome the challenge. Besides, develop conviction is also an useful lesson for many managers. As we know, in business, there is a great deal of uncertainty about what's going to happen, and it will affect the employees' spirit in a negative way. Therefore, creating an environment of certainty for everyone will make the employees feel that the future is certain and that they are all headed in the right direction. Then they will focus more on what needs to be done and produce higher quality work. Moreover, there is also a good way to boost employees' motivation. This is to find an enemy. In reality, we know that there are existing the enemy in the story of many successful businessmen, such as Steve Jobs, Jack Ma, so on. Enemies create the competition, which makes people be aware of the dangers. Therefore, they will move forward to be able to fight with it. And thanks to the enemies, we realize the importance of increasing our capacity, learn how to face with a failure, and we'll try our best to successfully accomplish our work. Last but not least, all managers need to understand the importance of employee recognition. In an interview, Steve Jobs mentioned that employees have to feel value in order to be motivated and engaged in their work, and we think it's totally true. When employees know that their work contributes to the success of the company, definitely they are willing to spend more time and effort to devote to this company. That's all our presentation, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you, the teacher and friends, for listening.